Thanks so much for everyone for coming that's here in person today, and also thanks to those who are watching on Zoom. So first, before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge a few people. Dr. Petra Bywood and Amanda Moo did a lot of the research that I'm talking about the results today. Jimmy Twin led the impact work, and Nick Blackford is from the AWU, the Australian Workers Union. He's been involved in the research, the impact work, as well as here today to present. So we're very grateful for that. Thank you, Nick. So bitumen's used as a binder in the production of asphalt for road surfaces. So under normal ambient conditions, bitumen's stable and it's solid and it doesn't present any health risks. But in road construction, it needs to be heated to facilitate the spreading of the asphalt. And during this process, a complex mixture of vapours and particulate matter is emitted. So WorkSafe had received some complaints about these fuming loads and the effect on the health of some of the workers. So they asked ISCRR to review the evidence on the risks of bitumen exposure in roadside paving workers. So they asked us for an evidence review, which is when we look at the published scientific literature, and we do like a little, sort of like a mini systematic review, a rapid systematic review. And we look at, the systematic reviews and the RCTs, randomised controlled trials that have been published in this area, or other sort of trials, whatever evidence is the highest level that we can get. And so we were requested to that. We had a meeting. Kate Harris from WorkSafe requested this. And when we were chatting to her, I said to her, how widespread do you think this problem is? And is there any other sort of WorkSafe equivalents from around Australia? Have they been working on this as well? And, what do the asphalt companies feel like? Are they aware of the problem? And so I suggested that we do an environmental scan as well, which she totally agreed with. And so this is what we ended up doing. So the evidence review, which was sort of the high level of evidence, was looking at the adverse health effects associated with bitumen exposure, but also strategies to minimise the health risks to roadside workers. Whereas the environmental scan, because not everything is published in scientific literature, so that environmental scan found other information, lots of other information, online resources from asphalt companies, government institutions, research agencies. We looked nationally, internationally. We did interviews with a number of people from we interviewed people from 4 different asphalt companies, as well as the AWU. So our key research questions for the environmental scan, which number 2 and 3 overlap with the evidence review, was really what's the bitumen and asphalt industry profile like, especially in the Victorian context? Like where's the bitumen sourced? What sorts are there? What are the conditions for the road paving crew? And then also the number 2 and 3, looking at the health effects associated with exposure to the bitumen contents and fumes, and also what factors have been shown to mitigate this risk. So I'm just going to give you a really high level, couple of slides for each of the evidence review and the environmental scan. But there's all the information is in the 2 reports that are on the clearinghouse on ISCRR's website. So the acute effects that have been found in the published literature, there were studies that had shown a decline in lung function pre versus post shift, as well as in people that are exposed versus non-exposed workers exposed to the bitumen fumes. There was reports of increased respiratory symptoms such as coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, chest tightness. There was increased inflammatory markers, including in the urine and actually in tissues, including liver and the throat and stuff, and also some evidence of increased eye irritation as well. We looked at the chronic effects. There was some evidence that it might be linked to development of some cancers. Also, increased biomarkers were found that represent organ toxicity, tissue injury, and DNA damage. The second part of looking at the risk mitigation. So this was really looking at what could reduce this risk. Personal protective clothing, air purifying respiratory masks, and you probably think obviously those 2 things are, are going to help, and they do. The problem is having a respiratory mask on while you're trying to work and make roads and talk to the other people that you're working with in the road paving crew wasn't always practical or pleasant. So, you know, it wasn't that they were rarely worn. Substituting biodiesel for cleaning equipment. So I'll talk a little bit about the diesel in a sec, and also design integrated fume capture systems on the paver machines that was found to be more efficient than other models. So I'm just going to talk about the environmental scan findings. There's 3 different sorts of asphalt. There's hot mix. This is the one that's been used in Australia mostly. It's warm to like 170 to 180 degrees. So it's quite hot. So you can imagine those road paving workers that are working with it and the vapours coming off it. That's the most commonly used, and that's the one that was causing the problem. There's also warm mix asphalt. That's being used increasingly overseas. It's like sort of 20 to 50 degrees, or 30 to 50 degrees cooler, and it doesn't have that same level of vapours coming off it. Cold mix asphalt is more used for repairing roads rather than, you know, creating new ones. There's also inclusion of recycled materials, which is great that, you know, they can be used, but it also does add variability. So, you know, some of the people were saying that, you know, there's different smells and different vapours, and, you know, it depends on what's included. Other findings included the paver and the screed operators were more exposed compared to other job tasks, such as someone that's maybe sitting up on a roller compared to down on the thing at the road level. I might just pop back to, in regards to this, I had a picture on the first slide. So that's like a screed machine, and on the back there, the road workers actually will stand like right at the back there. So they're actually, you know, breathing a lot of those fumes in. And that's the problem compared to maybe someone that's sitting up the top of a machine. Well, that just made it the most easiest way to explain that. And also diesel. Diesel was used as a slip agent and also to clean the paving equipment, but it's also associated with more fumes. So that's not good. In the environmental scan, we did find of the 4 asphalt companies, 2 had started to change to other products, and 2 were thinking about it. They were still using diesel, and they were also starting to look at some of the other ones as well. Again, the acute health effects were identified: eye, nose, throat and skin irritation, but also things like headache, nausea, vomiting and respiratory discomfort were all included as, you know, what workers had found in and reported. There's also found that there's inconsistent testing for some of these fumes and that. So all of the asphalt companies were doing some testing of the air and that, and there's regulations, but it's obviously not enough to, and they said that all their results were coming in, you know, under the required level, but obviously, you know, there's obviously some problems still. As far as the incidents go, the workers were revealing that the symptoms were common, and whereas when we talked to the asphalt companies, they said, oh, there's only, you know, very odd cases, and, you know, maybe like once every 6 months they might pop up, and they're sort of random, and we always address them when they happen. And sort of from that sort of information and further interviews that we did, it really seems like there's a huge culture of underreporting. So the underreporting could be due to like worker characteristics. A lot of them may not want to be seen to be complaining. They just, yeah, they don't want to sort of be the whinger kind of thing. Also a desire to get the job finished, fear of reprisals, or a perceived lack of response from management. Whether that's, you know, it's a perceived lack. So now I'd like to talk about the impact journey with Nick. So just briefly first. So we did the research, as we said, and this whole impact journey was really enabled by WorkSafe Victoria. So not only did they pay for our research to start, but then they've, using our research findings, they employed Nick as an OHS Bitumen Fumes Officer at the AWU, and also led to the formation of a key stakeholders forum. There's lots of gaps and opportunities identified in the research. So there's lots of initiatives that could be developed to address some of these gaps and also, some of these opportunities. Okay, so Nick, would you like to tell us about the key stakeholder meetings?
Yeah, thanks. I suppose the project, or my role, sort of kicked off at 2020 as COVID went bang, which was fun. There was pros and cons to that, with the ability to use Zoom and people getting more familiar with online meetings, and most of the work that was done off the report identified many gaps, and that collaboration was key to getting all the right people in the room, and the decision makers, as was mentioned in the other studies before, having people that can have the influence to, or the ability to influence change. We were cautious of not just identifying issues, but we're coming with solutions as well, and that really set us off on our way with the stakeholders forum. I know in the States previously they had successfully had like tripartite arrangements where they had the unions, the regulators, and the employers, manufacturers in the room, and that's where they got significant change to address some of these issues. So the report identified that obviously Europe and America are quite a long way ahead of us in this space, and I think once we broke down those barriers and showed that we were there to, for the betterment of everybody, we started to get some piece of success, and it's a lot of work to go, because as Janine said, there was many gaps that we identified, or was identified through ISCRR's report.
Excellent. Thank you. The next one is about sort of the Department of Transport specification and industry switch to warm mix asphalt. Could you give some more details on that, please?
Yeah, sure. I started on the ground. I worked for close to 10 years laying asphalt, and early days in my time on the ground, we were testing warm mix asphalt, but it never took off. Like the advantages of it that we were told, obviously energy reduction and sustainability and all these other great initiatives, and it just never took hold, and that sort of faded away in Australia, and we weren't sure why. And when we presented this, the findings from ISCRR, that Europe are well and truly on their way. Germany's banned hot mix in any sort of contained area, like a tunnel or a car park, and it's one of the other key points was that the key to emission release was temperature. Right, that was the most significant factor, and it was clearly identified in the report. And so when we initially presented this at our key stakeholders forum, we had some pushback from I should have probably said who we had at the table. We had DOT, WorkSafe, obviously, Department of Transport, I should have said, the council, the Council Association, Asphalt Association, all the employers, a number of other entities such as set up by the state government for recycling programs, for having to put recycled materials into construction tenders. So we had people from those departments, and initially, we had a bit of pushback saying warm mix asphalt isn't proven, it doesn't last as long. The evidence isn't there, and it turns out that there was actually a separate tender process that employers had to produce to allow them to use warm mix asphalt, as opposed to hot mix asphalt. That was a lot simpler and tried and tested, and they knew what they were dealing with. So within less than 12 months, we had specification changes at DOT to allow employers and to tender on projects with no differentiation between warm mix and hot mix asphalt. So it was a significant outcome, because it also led to further technologies, innovation. And now from the start of the project, we saw really large variations in temperature. You might get 10 trucks delivered to the site in a row that are nice and consistent, and they'll get a spike of above the acceptable level. That 175 degrees is a rule of thumb based on quality of the bitumen and the application of the asphalt. So above that, it starts to oxidize and burn away, and it doesn't last as long, right? So it should whether those things cross over, the safety and quality. So we really focused on that, and within no time we had change. It was now even with hot mix asphalt, we're seeing a lot more consistent temperatures, awareness on the ground. Blokes doing QA, or I should say, workers doing QA control with a temperature gun, which again was a rarity, and it's significant. So the awareness on the ground is much improved.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Nick. Standardised testing. Do you want to give us a little bit of an update on that?
Yeah, I'll try my best in the short time frame. So obviously the study identified that not only was there no standardised testing method across the industry, a lot of companies were testing for, although there were some key compounds in they were all testing for, there were some compounds identified that not everyone was testing for. And I mean, we still firmly believe that there's others that aren't tested for, but that's ongoing. What we managed to get we're trying to encourage the association to take hold of this and be leaders in the development of comprehensive analysis of what potentially is there from the start. No matter what the product is, we do headspace testing. So we identify all the potential compounds in the product, and then when they're doing personal monitoring on site, there's nothing that can be missed. Right? That's the standard. That's the we're not missing anything. So again, it's ongoing because not everybody's doing headspace testing, which is unfortunate. And with the emergence again with all these recycled elements, we've got tyres and printer cartridges, plastic bags, car bumpers, recycled glass. There's financial incentives for doing so, which is great. But we've got to make sure that we're covering all bases and not exposing workers, to anything else. Because it's, as Janine said, bitumen itself is complex. Throw plastic in it. Any kid with a lighter will tell you that burning plastic is pretty nasty. So just ensuring that when the testing is taking place, you've got all the engineers there, all the big wigs, and then 6 months later, are those systems still in place? Are those temperatures consistent? Are we not exposing them to anything further?
Excellent. And for the fourth one, the alternate slip release agents and products.
Well, this was a good one. I thought it could be a nice early win, an easy one. What we found, prior to the study, we did our a comprehensive survey of our members, and it was a 67% buy-in, and which was quite significant because the lack of reporting and the lack of engagement. Unfortunately, we go on to site, we hear about these problems, but these guys often fear of reprisal and all the other items mentioned were everywhere. But the other two presentations, that's a cultural problem that we're still struggling to manage. But the diesel was 68, or I can't remember the exact number of companies were still using diesel. And my time on the ground, we sort of forced the hand of the company to find an alternative product because we know that diesel's bad, right? And the SDS says it if it's on your clothes, but you should be wearing impervious PPE and all the rest of it. These guys could be wearing the same pants for a week, and they're spraying it under a high pressure hose. So we thought, one, we had second tier companies even approaching us. What do you know? What products are out there? Because we can't find any information on it. What works? And the cultural part of that as well was very, very difficult because we'd have a worker saying, well, it doesn't work as good as diesel. It smells funny, So that was difficult to navigate. Also, it doesn't affect your health long term as much as diesel does. So that again, it was a two-part document really. One, produced by the association, tips for working safely with slip release products or alternative products, and then effectively a list of products that is on their database, not public listed, because we were worried that there might be commercial issues there, but who's used what and how, what were the outcomes, and there's probably 10 products on there that are readily available. And the price of diesel at the moment, some of it's cheaper. So yeah, that's great. It's really good.
Yes. Thank you. So the key factors for impact success, we might wrap this up pretty quickly. Researcher engagement throughout the project life cycle. We always aim to work closely with WorkSafe and any other groups that we can during the work. Champions driving agenda. Certainly, I've mentioned WorkSafe Victoria and their investment in this and their interest and support in this area. What other champions, Nick?
Our members, for one, I think WorkSafe, obviously, but HSRs were identified as very few and far between in this space. Again, we'd get some nominated and get some trained and then get them active, and then they'd end up leaving the company or moving on, or stepping down as health and safety representatives. So they were a driving force in some of the entry reports and identifying some of the systems that were lacking in place to mitigate these problems when they do occur. So yeah, I think a lot of the hygienists too have been very. The association, I think, have been very generous with their time and their knowledge. There's some key parties there that have helped steer our committee. So yeah.
And I think you're the biggest champion that I've met in this area. So thank you to you. Resource commitment to address the research problem and also engagement with industry leaders. We've probably covered that, do you think? Or do you want to add anything else to those two?
Well, I think it needs to be driven from the industry. If we can get them to, see the benefits of this, and that's starting to cut through now. I think that's key, and the collaboration, calm heads in the room that can, find solutions. Obviously, that's key to getting long-term outcomes and cultural change, because it's been a dog's breakfast to be quiet, to be honest.
Yeah, Jimmy.
Thank you both for that great presentation. There's been a flood of questions on this topic, so most definitely this will be a learning series topic, because a lot of them we could talk all afternoon on those areas. One that came through that I think that Nick, for yourself, to give a nice closing statement to this session, total worker health needs to be addressed. What do you think the next step is?
Well, I suppose this is one part of the risk that these guys and girls face on a daily basis. It is a very high-risk industry. Early in the presentation, Janine highlighted the use of RPE and PPE. You try shoveling 170-degree asphalt with longs and longs, a hard hat, a mask, earmuffs, gloves, glasses, exposure to the sun, all the elements. If rain hits the asphalt, you can touch the roller, you can hear the roller, you can't see the roller because of the steam that's coming off it, right? Obviously, noise reduction, all of these exposures. If we get a hygienist to come in and assess diesel particulate matter or silica or hydrocarbons or whatever it is, we need to get that total worker health and total worker exposure identified, and I think that'll be the next step in what we're trying to achieve.
Excellent.
Well, thank you both, Janine and Nick.